Once again, we're live on the beginning of a new week, teleprompter-free zone, the morning report. All right, so in the news, Vice President Mike Pence was in Korea over the weekend, visiting with the acting Korean president, and that's a whole other can of worms, something that I'm sure they'll be dealing with later on down the line when the new president gets elected. But there to kind of make a presence and show a force a little bit, as Pence warned North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un that not to test the might and resolve of the U.S. military. This comes after a lot of war of words between North Korea and the U.S., a lot of saber rattling going on. North Korea held a big parade, had a lot of missiles in there, though reports are that those missiles were basically fake and only for show, which I wouldn't be surprised, especially in light of the fact that North Korea apparently tried to launch a missile and it blew up. And so that was the big fail for them, showing that they may not be ready for prime time. So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, if I was North Korea, I wouldn't really be testing the U.S. and what they could do in a quick strike. The president has already shown that he has no patience for terrorists and others that either kill their own civilians or are threatening our own civilians, and any safety concerns and things like that, he will strike. And he's unlike the previous president, Obama, he is ready to move with military action and force as needed. Also in the news, a very horrific killing on Facebook Live. There's police in Cleveland are looking for a guy named Steve Stevens who murdered an elderly black gentleman on Facebook Live. Why anybody would get to do this except for the attention? This is just a terrible, terrible thing. I don't know that there is a way for Facebook to actually prevent anything like that from happening. I am sure, like a lot of others of us, we never even thought about that being a potential problem, having Facebook Live, using things like this, using YouTube Live like we're on now, as a potential way to put up some pretty horrific things that can't be censored immediately, but could wind up being taken down later. But we also did have that case of the teenage-year-old, 13-year-old kid who playing with a gun and then shot and killed himself on Facebook Live, and that was an accident. So you have to be careful with these things. But this guy who's at large is definitely got some issues and probably classifies as easily as being a lunatic at this point. And the threat to the public is still pretty high because no one knows exactly where this guy is at this point. Today also is Patriots Day in Boston. It is the Boston Marathon Day. Can you believe it's been 4 years since the Boston Marathon bombing with the Tsarnaev brothers? They've left lasting legacy, not just of those that were tragically killed that day, but also those that were injured and maimed. Security is tight, which hopefully will prevent any kind of terrorists from trying any kind of stupid activity, as there are police all around the place. And it's just a shame that these kinds of things have to happen. But best of luck to all the racers today. May the best man and women win. And we'll see what the results are a little bit later this afternoon. Also, we have the protests, the tax return protests, as I'll call them right now, against President Trump. People gathering around the country demanding that President Trump release his tax returns. We did get a little bit of a glimpse of one tax return from 2005 that showed that he paid a lot of money in taxes. He earned a lot of money, and he was able to defer a good chunk of that income, or at least write it off with expenses, all legal. And I would assume that should we ever see any of his other tax returns in full, that we will see nothing surprising in the way of income or deductions. But the left is definitely hot on the trail. They think he needs to release it. But, what happens when they release it? Probably not much news out of there, except that the president will have wound up paying a lot of taxes. And so that could be twisted in all kinds of ways. But I would assume that somewhere during this 4-year period that the president might at least release one tax return, maybe allow the public to see the current year return once it's eligible for public inspection, et cetera, et cetera. That may not be till after for a while. I don't know what all the rules are, but it may be a while before we see those. But I think eventually you might see something as they've had more time to prepare for these types of things. The other thing about Pence being in Korea too is just it's good for the relations right now. There's need to reassure South Korea that we have their back as they and that to make sure that the base stays open in South Korea. It's for their own protection, but it does portend that we're ready to go, just in case. There's also today the big White House annual Easter egg roll. First Lady Melania Trump has already tweeted that she's looking forward to being there, so she will be around. It will not be as big pomp and circumstance in terms of entertainers. Trump's relationship with Hollywood is probably a little frayed right now, and so that he's not going to necessarily get the headliners, but there'll be some people around, and how necessary those people are to the overall Easter egg roll, I don't know. I think there'll be a lot of people clamoring, hoping to get that egg with Donald Trump's signature on it, that type of thing. And then I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see them within a few months, if not a month, just popping up all over eBay for sale, because there are only like 25,000 of these things made. So that does, with the number of people, that does limit the number of total eggs that are out there. So we'll see how that goes, but hope the kiddies enjoy that. And then finally, United Airlines, just when they thought they had all the PR nightmare disaster put behind them, they now may have run into another problem. Married engaged couple flying from Salt Lake City to Houston for their wedding was deplaned, deboarded, whatever the correct terminology is, by U.S. Air Marshal after they had moved from their assigned seats to another set of seats. What they said was because there was someone sleeping in their assigned seats, and that they took a couple other seats, which apparently, according to some results, that they hadn't paid for, but their attorney said that they had indeed paid for that. United has new policies where passengers will not be asked to leave a plane once they have boarded. For the sake of bumping people, they'll make sure that they get this measure straightened out more in advance, and they have to watch out for some other things as well. But it's not like that. And anybody was hurting as a result of this in the long run. We'll see. I mean, United is going to be fine financially. People are still going to fly them, and this will be forgotten if they can just smooth these things over and get these new policies in place and say this is the way we're going to do business, and then maybe they'll be paying out some decent sized bucks to this guy in Kentucky, this Dr. Dow. They could have avoided this by being a little friendlier up front. They don't have to have in D.C., a place in D.C., a base in D.C., a hub, and so as a result of that, you just have these different things going on here. Not even sure what. So anyway, that's about it for the morning report. Have a great day. We'll have a Caves Corner podcast posted later to YouTube, as well as it's going to be live on Facebook and on Twitter Periscope starting around 8:30. See ya.